Hello and welcome to the Doof Book Club, our monthly live stream discussion of a book chosen by you, our listeners. My name is Matt Freeman, and this is my sixth life.
I was on mute, and my name is Scott Daly, and this is my third life.
12th.
What?
You're forgetting some of them.
Well, you know what they say, Matt. There's no loss if you can't remember what you have lost.
Yep.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We hope you are all having a wonderful Friday evening. We apologize again for having to delay this a week, but we are here now and ready to talk about this book. Me, Matt, and Matt. Also, no, wait, no. We're back. I can't keep track. We see everyone saying hello in chat. If you are here for the very, very first time, welcome. This is we're Doof Media, and this is our book club. We also make podcasts all about the stories we love. Every week we do something new with a book or a movie or whatever, and we also do this monthly book club. And now Matt will explain what a book club is, but maybe you already know that. I don't know.
Each month, Scott and I select 5 books from a pool submitted to us by our wonderful Doof community. We put up a poll for all of our supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia, and we let them vote on which they'd like us to talk about. The book with the most votes wins, and then we all read it.
That's right. And then we meet up on the last Friday of every month, unless we have to delay things by a week. Matt and I will post slides of interesting, important moments. And basically, all of us just collectively dive deep into this book. Matt and I will lead the discussions because we are the ones with the microphones. But this is a fully interactive thing. That's why we stream it live. We want to hear from y'all. We want to hear what you think about the book and the slides we're talking about. And we will be interacting with the audience. So if you're listening to the podcast feed and wondering why we are talking to people that you can't hear, that is why. Say hello, everybody. They're saying hello, and they're commenting on the multiple mats. There's multiple mats. It's all very confusing.
Yeah. They're also sending warnings from the future. or the past in some cases. It's hard to say exactly.
Both. Matt, what book are we talking about this month?
This month, the patrons picked The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. And the summary is as follows. Some stories can be told in just one lifetime. Harry August is on his deathbed. Again. No matter what he does or the decisions he makes, when death comes, Harry always returns to where he began, a child with all the knowledge of a life he has already lived a dozen times before. Nothing ever changes. Until now. As Harry nears the end of his 11th life, a little girl appears at his bedside. I nearly missed you, Dr. August, she says. I need to send a message. This is the story of what Harry does next, and what he did before, and how he tries to save a past he cannot change, and a future he cannot allow.
Pretty good summary. These are mixed bags. I think when I read that summary, I thought this little girl telling him about the end of the world would play a more important role in the ongoing story. And she didn't really.
I did too. I thought that was going to be sort of a framing device, or we were going to learn that she was important in some meaningful way. That's fine.
Not that kind of book.
Not a big deal.
Yeah. So this is the part now where we're going to kind of talk about our overall impressions, and I'm only setting this up because as Matt and I are talking about what we thought of this book overall, I'm giving you folks time to let us know what you thought of the book overall. How'd you read this book before for book club, or did you read it just for the club itself? And what'd you think of it? What'd you like and what you didn't like? And Matt, while they're doing that, why don't you tell me the same thing? What'd you think of The First 15 Lives of Harry August?
I had never heard of this book at all, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's a sort of concept that I feel like this has been done before, but then I'm like, I can't think of any instance of it being done before. In any way, I mean, just the basic idea of you live your life over and over. This is just a great, fun execution of it. It really explores all of the avenues that you would want it to. It creates some very fun situations. And I think that what I like most about it, honestly, is that it stays very character focused and really becomes, it uses the genre conceit of, time travel or living your life over and over again to sort of say something very specific about this character. and about the human condition, and that's really what I appreciate most about it. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I liked it a whole bunch too. I mean, I think it was a very thought-provoking book. It's one of those books that I'm excited to talk about because I know there's a lot of things bouncing around in my head after reading this book about what it was trying to do, what it was trying to say, and some of these things I've got a pretty good handle on, and some of these things I've got a good handle on the framing of what it was trying to say, but not necessarily the conclusion of what it was trying to say. So I'm looking forward to this conversation to see if we can get to the bottom of this book a little bit. But overall, I really liked it. I think the prose was written in a very fun way because there's a lot of like crazy shit that happens in this book. But Harry August and therefore Claire North writes so intentionally dryly sometimes, where he's just like, kind of like, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, then I died.
Yeah.
And it like I think we're going to talk about it in like the very first slide because that's like the big impact that the book had with me right away was just like the casual nature of talking about things that to any other human being would be the biggest events of one's life.
Hmm. Yep. Well, and I think like that creates a fun effect where it made me sort of relax a bit and think like, oh, death is just part of life, and then I'm like, that's just because this guy just comes back to life when he dies.
Right,
But
right, right.
it's
Right,
funny.
but I mean, I wonder, like, a lot of this book is exploring, age-old questions like, what is the meaning of life? What is our purpose? What is who or what or why is God? And I think the book explores that a lot. And again, I'm not sure if it arrives at an answer that like I can give like a one line like this is what the book is saying about this. I'm honestly not sure.
Yeah, I think it's saying a bunch of different things, and I think one of the things it may be saying is like even these people with this sort of obviously supernatural gift don't have any more insight into the human condition than we do. Like
Hmm.
even after 15 lives, you can't really say that Harry August has untouchable wisdom, or if anything, it seems to have dehumanized him in some ways. But we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I we are going to talk about that a lot, but I love the ways in which the questions that they're asking and the problems with that they're facing as these immortals are so easy to line up and frame as just the normal problems and questions that we all ask ourselves in our normal linear lives, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
We got some people in chat. Miss Evil Doom is saying that they liked it. It was their second time reading it, and they thought the conceit was great. The themes felt kind of muddy, though. Yeah, I want to really spend some time on that idea of the themes of them being muddy because I wonder if we can get to the bottom of are the themes just not clear, or is North attempting to just say I don't know,
Hmm.
like just like capturing the quest for answering the unknowable, I don't
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, yeah. I think there it may also just be like there's a bunch of different things. Like
Hmm.
there's sort of a bunch of you can almost imagine this. I don't know how this was written honestly, but you can almost imagine it having been written as a series of sort of short stories where you got the short story about the serial killer, you got the short story about the guy who tortured him. I mean,
Hmm.
in effect, these are the movements of the plot that show like Harry learning different lessons over the course of his life. But I think you could look at each one of them and say something fairly specific, theme wise about each of those things.
Hmm.
Um, um, but yeah, I think there's just so much going on that it's hard to pin down what is the theme of the work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. um Vale says the conceit, the way the time travel was handled, they found so unique and interesting that it carried the whole book for them. Sophronia is talking about wasn't too hot on it, what it was trying to say, which I think we'll get into that. And Daniel is talking about the time travel's fun, but it's really unclear on how things actually work when you look too close. Yeah, I mean, I think there was one moment when I asked you a question about the time travel, and I think your framing device helped me just get to the bottom of it, being just like it's just here's the deal: is the Ouroboreans move through time collectively, and they're almost on their own time scale, and you can't think about like that stuff too much. That's just kind
Yeah.
of I feel like every time travel plot has a bit of that stuff when you're just like, wait,
Hmm.
but
I it yeah, it is funny, or I guess interesting, because I don't know if this is a flaw of the book or if it's something that was not only intentional but worked really well. But like the story doesn't ever really give you certain answers, or if
mhm.
it does, it like buries them. So like for example, multiple people who are doing the book club with us this month came away with the same question of like, so wait a minute, why can't you just like tell another Ouroboran some information and then kill them and then have them tell you in the past and then you know it. It's like, well, it doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
You'll only hear that information in your next cycle through. All of the Ouroborans are locked to the same like integer number of lives that they're on.
Yeah.
And if you don't, but like the book never really says that, although it couldn't possibly be any other way. If it wasn't that way, then there would be time paradoxes all over the place.
Yeah.
Um, so like yeah, that it's one of those things where you're like, oh my god, this is so confusing, and then once you realize that, you're like, oh, it's not confusing. It's
Yeah.
just yeah, okay,
Yeah, I mean, like, if I'm on life 3 and you're on life 8, we can never interact with each other in any other way except for that life 3, life 8, life 4, life 9. You know, like
exactly,
that's just
yeah.
that. Yeah, it's locked. You're locked in movement together like that. It seems like
Mhm.
that must be the only way it actually works. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, you could even I think it's also the case that like even if I'd been born 300 years ago and I'm on life 8 and you're on life 2, like it still remains locked that way. It's
Yeah.
just because it's staggered.
Yeah.
Everyone, yeah.
The way I posed the question to you was like, what if like Harry dies and Vincent still lives for 30 more years, but in Harry's life, that's still Vincent's last one because he's not dead. Like, and the answer is just
No.
no, no.
Yeah. Right. If that were the case, then there'd be all sorts of other options that you could,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
All right,
But
that's enough of that.
yeah, that's yeah. I think that's literally all of the time travel talk.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, let's jump into the first slide, shall we?
Yeah. All right. So these are the first words of the book. As always, we like to read the first words of the book because those are usually surprisingly rich.
Mm-hmm.
And the inciting incident. The second cataclysm began in my 11th life in 1996. I was dying my usual death, slipping away in a warm morphine haze, which she interrupted like an ice cube down my spine. She was 7. I was 78. She had straight blonde hair worn in a long pigtail down her back. I had bright white hair, or at least the remnants of the same. I wore a hospital gown designed for sterile humidity. She, bright blue school uniform and felt cap. She perched on the side of my bed, her feet dangling off it, peered into my eyes. She examined the heart monitor plugged into my chest, observed where I disconnected the alarm, felt for my pulse, and said, I nearly missed you, Dr. August. Her German was Berlin high, but she could have addressed me in any language of the world and still passed for respectable. She scratched for the back of her left leg, where her white knee-length socks had begun to itch from the rain outside. While scratching, she said, I need to send a message back through time, if time can be said to be important here. As you're conveniently dying, I ask you to relay it to the clubs of your origin, as it has been passed down to me. I tried to speak, but the words tumbled together on my tongue, and I said nothing. The world is ending, she said. The message has come down from child to adult, passed back down the generations from 1,000 years forward in time. The world is ending, and we cannot prevent it. So now it's up to you. I found that Thai was the only language which wanted to pass my lips in any coherent form, and the only word which I seemed capable of forming was why. Not, I hastened to add, why was the world ending? Why did it matter? She smiled, and understood my meaning without needing it to be said. She leaned in close and murmured in my ear, the world is ending, as it always must, but the end of the world is getting faster. That was the beginning of the end.
Man, there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, God, there's as usual. Whenever you reread the beginning, you're kind of stunned at how much is packed in.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this just honestly just kind of washed over me without really being processed because there's just so much here.
Especially when you acknowledge that the framing device of the entire novel, as we learn at the very end, is that Harry is writing a letter to Vincent, and
Hmm.
everything we're reading is Harry's letter to Vincent here. So like you kind of understand why he's so frank with everything that's going on around him. Although I guess that does beg the question, like why he over explains it to us, the audience, in some ways.
Hmm.
I don't know. Probably don't need to think about that too much, but I love the indifference here. I love the not why did it not why was the world ending, but why did it matter? That's such a charged thing. Like, why do I care? Like, why do I
Yeah.
care if the world's ending?
Right.
Um, and so just his indifference to that, his indifference to his death, her indifference to his death. I love that little beat of her scratching her leg. Like
Hmm.
this is the kind of one of the most important things that to us we would hear. Like the world's ending and it's happening faster. This is like an important message. She's bringing doom to the entire race of humanity, and she's just casually like scratching an itch on her leg while she's doing it. And I think it just kind of shows, it just goes really far to show just how this is just like rote. Just this is something they've done over and over again and probably will do again and again and again. And that's kind of these people's existence. It's just like they're very rarely excited or challenged in any way.
Yeah, there. I think just this fatalism that really
Mm-hmm.
pervades the whole book because, I mean, these people, all of these characters, including our point of view, our protagonists, are so disconnected from from humans that like they just, once you've met the same person, the same normal human in like three different lives, and realize that like the they sort of cease to become people to these
Yeah.
Ouroborans at some point, and it leads them to this like, okay, everything happens the same way. If we try to make it happen any other way, then it ends up being a disaster. People just like they're born, they grow old, they die over and over, and it doesn't matter. And
Mm-hmm.
it, I don't know. It's just it puts you in a funny headspace because like even though this phenomenon is not real, you still sort of get the growing feeling of the pointlessness of everything, and like you understand his sort of search for spiritual meaning. When you're stuck in a world like this, you're like, okay, what's the point? What's the point of this? I
Yeah.
like, just that kind of reflects off the one human who does learn about his existence, literally saying, "What is the point of you?" Um, and and the book is basically saying like, I don't know. He doesn't ever really find out. Maybe there is no
Yeah.
point.
Well, I
Maybe there's
mean,
no point to any of this.
well, like, what is the point of anything? I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna get some really high concept stuff, but like, these are questions we've always asked ourselves, and like, it is very rare that you're gonna get a satisfying answer. Like, whether
Hmm.
you live one life or 100 lives.
Yeah. Well, and
Um.
it's no more fair to ask that than it is to say, what is the point of us?
Mhm.
Like, I don't. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I want to talk about when we get there is I don't think if you asked Claire North whether Harry was right, I don't think she would say yes. I think there's a lot going on with this character that she is kind of pretty vicious and attacking her character. Um, I don't think Harry is a particularly great person generally, and I don't think we're supposed to leave the book saying, "Oh yes, Harry made the right decision there." By killing the quantum mirror, like refusing to allow those questions to be answered. Harry is was right in that.
Hmm.
I don't think that's just flat out what the novel is saying. I think there are ways in which North, like, very specifically points out the hypocrisy in Harry's behavior throughout his many lives.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also really interesting. This is, I don't think a tangent, but I think maybe it's fun how this is an indication of how kind of complicated and almost convoluted the themes get because yes, Harry is not a great guy, but like the reason he's not a great guy is that like he's had so many experiences across all of these lives where he's
Sure.
just accruing more and more terrible experiences, terrible traumas that shape him in different ways. I mean, he's basically saying in his letter like, I'm going to tell you all of this so that you'll understand the reasons why I made certain decisions.
Hmm.
And he's basically laying out almost in the form of an argument. Like, look, these are all of these terrible things that have happened to me that have shaped me into being the person who would make the call to blow up the quantum mirror at the expense of ever finding out about what our purpose is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we did definitely jumped ahead, so we'll circle
Yeah.
back around to these things, but these are definitely things that are on my mind as we go through every single one of these slides. Um, the next slide we have here is just Harry's first life, which I just find this pretty fascinating, and we'll talk about it when we get through it. But the first life I lived was undistinguished. Like all young men, I was called to fight in the Second World War, where I was thoroughly undistinguished. I was a thoroughly undistinguished infantryman. Yet, if my wartime contribution was meager, my life after the conflict hardly added to a sense of significance. I returned home to Hulne House after the war to take over the position which had been held by Patrick, tending to the grounds around the estate. Like my adopted father, I had been raised to love the land, the smell of it after rain, and the sudden fizzing in the air when all the seeds of the gorse split at once in the sky. And if I felt in any way isolated from the rest of society, it was merely as the absence of a brother might be to an only child, an idea of loneliness without the relevant experience to make it real. When Patrick died, my position was formalized, though by then the home's worth was almost entirely extinguished through squander and inertia. In 1964, but the property was bought by the National Trust, and I with it, and I spent the latter part of my years directing ramblers through the overgrown moors that surrounded the house, watching as the walls of the manor itself slowly sank deeper into the wet, black mud. I died in 1989 as the Berlin Wall fell, alone in the hospital in Newcastle, a divorcee with no children and a state pension who, even on his deathbed, believed himself to be the son of the long-departed Patrick and Harriet August, and who died eventually from the disease that has been the bane of my lives, multiple melanomas which spread throughout my body until the body itself ceases to function. Naturally, my reaction to being born again, precisely where I had begun, in the women's restroom of Berwick-upon-Tweed Station on New Year's Day 1919, with all the memories of my life that had gone before, induced its own rather cliched madness in me. As the full powers of my adult consciousness returned to my child's body, I fell first into a confusion, then an agony, then a doubt, then a despair, then a screaming, then a shrieking, and finally, aged 7 years old, I was committed to St. Margot's Asylum for Unfortunates, where I frankly believed myself to belong, and within 6 months of my confinement succeeded in throwing myself out of a window on the third floor. Wow.
It's like the dry like,
yeah.
is it even supposed to be funny? It is funny.
It is, I think, yeah. I mean, that's like you can get away with the dry humor at what is dark and horrible because it is meaningless to him. It doesn't matter anymore. It's like he's just total like the way he describes this, like confusion, agony, doubt, despair, screaming, shrieking, and finally I was committed to an asylum where I was so out of my mind that I threw myself out of a window and killed myself.
Yeah.
And I ran out of room on the slide, but the next thing he says is, I should have realized at that point that 3 stories up was not quite high enough to guarantee instant death, but luckily I landed on my head. And it's just like...
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, to me, the funny, like, the horrible thing about it is like confusion, doubt, despair, screaming, shrieking, and then he's 7 years old before he's actually committed, and you're like, oh my god, so you've been just freaking out for your entire childhood and in confusion and who knows what else, and before you finally, God.
Yeah, I mean, I do love that these 3 paragraphs at the top of this are basically, with some exceptions, the most he talks about his first life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after it basically moves on from there, and he's talking about all the other ones. But
it sort of primes you to like how this book is going to approach this idea, because this is not a character who like he's immediately reborn and immediately starts scheming like, oh, how do I use my knowledge of the future? He's not equipped for that, right? He freaks out. Like it takes many lives before he starts to sort of be a player on the stage. And I think as a character, he is just sort of a guy who lets things happen. That is who he is as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, like, it's fun to think of these Groundhog Day scenarios, and you know, the characters always wake up in the next day when it's just like a day thing, and they're confused and don't believe it's just actually the next day for a while. in this, you've lived an entire life. This is basically that episode of The Next Generation where Picard lives a full life and grows old and dies, and then wakes up back on the Enterprise, and he's like, "What?"
Hmm.
And it just like it's crazy. It's crazy. I think the show The Magicians did that too, which was it's a wonderful episode. Watch that show. Watch The Magicians. But yeah, I think I think there's so much. Someone in the comments. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I think we scrolled past it. Mike mentioned that this passage takes on so much deeper meaning when you consider it as a letter to Vincent, which is absolutely true. He is giving up the goat here, right? He's telling. We don't even realize it at this point in the book yet, but he's telling his origin, which is like so confident is he in his victory. We learn that he's giving up his origin story here, which could damn him in the future. But he feels he has won, and I mean he has, right? But
I guess you gotta hope that Vincent didn't have something set up where he could like immediately tell someone. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah,
See, now I'm trying to think through whether that was a bad idea or not. I
yeah. I
mean, it's
mean,
also.
I
Yep.
do think that like part of Harry's issue is he's super arrogant sometimes, and
Mhm.
like I do think this like I'm going to write you a 400 page like diary of my life just to torture you before you get to the end and realize that I've beaten you.
Mhm.
Just reeks of hubris in the way that like I wonder if this book went on for 15 more pages, or the reason why this book ends here is because Harry was never born actually. um,
Yeah, that's actually the secret reading that I was just thinking about is like, okay, so Harry is a mnemonic. He can't forget, and his life has sort of become this nightmare. And it may just be that he wants to die,
mhm.
because he can't wipe his memory. And so this is his actual. I mean, and if that were his goal, this would actually be pretty clever because it does force Vincent's hand. I,
Yeah,
I don't know why he would do that because all it does is it just guarantees that Vincent is going to win in the next cycle. Um, but or maybe this means that he kills Vincent in the next cycle, but then somebody else gets him in the cycle afterward. Who knows?
sure.
Um,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
I don't know either. So Frania pondered why this was set in the 20th century, and that's a really interesting question. I mean, we basically get to see the entirety of the century, right? Not quite. We start in 1919, but I think for practicality's sake, as we move towards the escalated and elevated like levels of technology being introduced, it allows us to have a hold on that stuff where we get it, where we can understand the significance of like 1950s there being personal computers and how fucking huge of a shift
Hmm.
that is.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I honestly just feel like that's about it. Like it's a
mhm.
it's a time period that we're basically familiar with either directly or through like films.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's also everything interesting happened between 1935 and
Yeah.
1990.
Nothing else happened in those that time
There's
period at
nothing else
all. Yeah,
interesting outside of that
nothing,
period.
nothing at all. So Fernie was talking about some math errors in the book. I hadn't seen that. Like some inconsistencies with dates and math, and I didn't notice that. I wonder if we want to get really, really like down the rabbit hole with that, or just chalk it up to an editing mistake. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'll just say this: I don't have the time on live on the air to figure out that, but I will say like I wouldn't put it past this book for there to be like a subtle hidden background message to what
Yeah,
to what Harry's actually doing
I
here.
wonder. I wonder if that. Yeah, that to go to channel our everything is intentional mantra. This could like how much of this could just be bullshit, right? And or slightly not true as like a he's gloating to Vincent about his victory, but also is like he's hiding his origin actually. Like he's changed some of the names, he's changed some of the locations, he's changed some of the dates to protect himself.
Mhm.
And I think that is really interesting because it calls into question. I mean, as soon as you establish something like that, it calls into question just the idea of narrative bias in general. Um,
Mhm.
that like. like, okay, how much of this is the way it really happened, how much of this is Harry's embellishment of, like, this book is almost a series of conversations with different people in different lives where Harry is looking for different answers and people are posing answers to the questions and they are almost universally unsatisfying to him. How much of that is his reflecting of those conversations versus the way they actually happened? I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah. I wouldn't mind rereading this book, and if I do, I'll pay more attention to that kind of detail.
I don't know if it needlessly muddles the story.
Yeah, if the point of the story is that Harry is going out of his way to obfuscate certain things, um, that would make some degree of sense. Like I don't know why. Like it does nicely solve the problem of like why would he tell Vincent his true past when he could just make up a past and then sort of make the same points
Yeah.
about about life.
I do like the idea of arrogant Harry August just showing his whole hand,
Hmm.
thinking you can't. It's too late to beat me. Um,
Hmm.
I have very mixed feelings about Harry August. We're gonna get to a slide here in a
Sure.
sec where I'm just like, you prick.
Yeah.
I don't like him.
All right. Next slide then.
Yeah.
Okay. So here, Jenny, Harry's true love, arguably, is told about his existence as a Kalachakra, and she doesn't take it well.
Mm-mm.
Jenny sat on the end of the bed, shoulders bowed and head low. I waited. It was an expectation that had been 4 lifetimes in the making. She had a bony back and a warm belly, hair cut deliberately short to challenge the conceptions of her surgeon colleagues, and a soft face that loved to laugh when no one was looking. She said, "How did you know all of this? How did you know it would happen?" "I told you," I replied. "This is the 4th time I've lived it, and I have an excellent memory." "What does that mean, the 4th time? How is it possible, the 4th time?" "I don't know. I became a doctor to try and find out. I've run experiments on myself, studied my blood, my body, my brain, tried to see if there's something in me which isn't right. But I was wrong. I'm it's not a medical problem, or if it is, I don't yet know how to find an answer. I would have left this job long ago, tried something new, but I met you. I have forever, but I want you now." "How old are you?" she demanded. I'm 54. I'm 206. I can't I can't believe what you're saying. I can't believe that you believe." "I'm sorry." "Are you a spy?" "No." "Are you ill?" "No, not by any handbook definition." "Then why?" "Why what?" "Why would you say these things?" "It's the truth. I want to tell you the truth." She crawled onto the bed next to me, in took my face into my hands, stared deeply into my eyes. "Harry," she said, and there was fear in her voice, "I need you to tell me. Do you mean what you're saying?"
And then she commits him.
She gives him and plants the seeds of his lifelong trauma and distrust of everyone and everything.
You picked up on why I pulled this slide in
Uh
particular.
huh.
That is exactly what I wanted to focus on in the slide. That this is the incident that defines how he looks at every linear in existence, right?
Hmm.
That these are people that he can never devolve, he can never share his secret, he can never have a relationship with any of these people. None of the stuff is available to him. He's alone. It really goes far to make it understand why he lives kind of a very solitary life. And he does have these friendships with a few, but they're almost always the Kalachakras, right?
Hmm.
Um, like he has brief interactions with people with linears, but it's never anything meaningful at
Yeah.
all.
In some cases, he will have a wife in some later cycle,
Mhm.
and it's just he very obviously treats it as like just almost a pet.
Yeah.
It's quite patronizing.
Well, when he was the crime lord, it was just
Yeah.
like literally like just functional. Like
Yeah.
it was a business arrangement on both ends entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's and obviously this person has affected him greatly because there's that moment in the end of the book when Vincent marries her just to fuck with him.
Yeah.
Um, and like and it does it almost works. It almost works. And so obviously Jenny has left a scar on him that even hundreds of years later has
Yeah,
not
right.
healed at all.
And not only does she like not only is he committed, but he's brutally tortured
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
government because he well, I mean they take him seriously. Um, which is there going to be a slide about that one government guy?
Um, no, we can talk about that here if you want.
Yeah, I think that should go here because this, I mean, this is a person who he loves and trusts, betraying him into the hands of someone who, fully understands his nature, and all they see in it is an opportunity to, for power, for control, for. I mean, you could even there's even a kind of. I think that's why the book is fun and complex because that guy he basically has the same philosophy as Vincent, which is okay. There's got to be something that we can do with this information that will help us.
Hmm.
Like you know the future. That's great. We can do all sorts of great things to avoid terrible things happening, to save people from dying by using your knowledge of the future. And and Harry's argument is like, look, like if you start acting on this stuff that I tell you, then it'll immediately become inaccurate because you'll have messed up the future. And
Hmm.
and he's right about that. And there's sort of the book doesn't, I think, ever really fully come down on one side of that debate.
Yeah.
I mean, Harry
Harry
obviously
does.
has this
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think the book leaves it. The book leaves us to make up our minds.
Hmm.
I also wanted to mention that the guy who tortures him. So this is the same audiobook reader as the reader for Player of Games, and so the voice that he does for that guy is very, very similar to the voice that he does for Marwyn Skell, the drone in that book, which is like also my favorite evil, like ambiguously evil voice.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. I see Mike just asked about the perfect memory, so let's talk about memory.
Yeah.
A moment to consider memory. The Kalachakra, the Ouroboreans, those of us who loop perpetually through the same course of historic event, though our lives within may change, in short, the members of the Cronus Club, forget. Some see this forgetting as a gift, a chance to rediscover things which have already been experienced, to retain some wonder at the universe. A sense of deja vu haunts the oldest members of the club, who know that they have seen this all before, but can't quite remember when. For others, the imperfect memory of our kin is viewed as proof that we are, for our condition, still human. Our bodies age and experience pain as humans do, and when we die, future generations may come and find the place where we are buried and dig up our rotting corpse and say, yes, here indeed is the departed flesh of Harry August, though where his mind has fled to, who can say? The implications for reality of this revelation are too numerous to discuss here, but always and again we return to the mind. The mind is what takes the journey through time while the flesh decays. We are no more and no less than minds, and it is human for the mind to be imperfect and to forget. So no one can remember who founded the Cronus Club, though everyone has played their part. Perhaps even the Ouroboran who made the first choice can no longer remember his part in it, and wonders with everyone else. When we die, it is as if the world resets, and only memory remains as evidence of the deeds we have done. No more and no less. I remember everything. And sometimes with that intensity which when it is not so much recollecting as reliving. Even as I address you now, I can recall the sun setting on the hills and the brownish smoke from Pearson's pipe as he sat on the patio beneath my window, looking towards the untouched croquet lawn. I cannot recreate the exact pattern of my thoughts, in that they had no words, no constructed thing on which to grapple, but I can tell you the moment I reached my decision, where I sat and what I saw. I was sitting in the bed, and I saw a picture of rustic farmhouses painted in greens and grays, with a spaniel barking outside, its legs ungainly and rabbit-like as it bound in the air. Uh, well, this is. I mean, what I love about this is the way it constructs this two things. So we have this long paragraph all about the one saving grace of being a Kalachakra is our memories fade. We
Mhm.
at least our memories fade, and
Mm.
and so we don't have to remember everything. We get to forget things. Sometimes forgetting things is good, and we get to forget things. And then he goes on to say, "Not me though. I
Yeah.
remember everything as if I was there, all of
Yeah.
it."
Yes, all of the betrayals, all of the tortures, uh, yeah, all of the heartbreak.
Hmm.
I agree. This is fantastically written. I think that's. that is the one that would be one of the worst things, would be not only to be immortal, but to not be able to forget anything, even if you wanted to. I think that's the nail in the coffin. Actually, is like he eventually learns that even if he does the the thing where you shock the brain, that doesn't work on him either.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
There's
just no
literally
escape.
there's one escape for him, and that is
Hmm.
death,
Yeah,
or non-existence rather. Yeah.
yeah. And even that, I'm just now realizing that we don't actually know that that would work in the same way on someone like him. We don't know that for a fact,
Yeah, I mean,
although it probably would.
it's only speculation, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I do this allows me to. The back of this book has that one fun. Sometimes these books have like book club questions, and when I see those, I always read them out of curiosity because sometimes it gives you a pretty good framing on like where to approach your theories about what the book is saying. One of the book club questions is, um, would you want to be one of these? Would you want to be a Kalachakra? And I was like, no, not at all. Not after the experience in this book. Like, I am as terrified of dying as any other mortal being, but this existence, especially Harry's existence, sounds terrible to me.
I'll have to think about that.
I know you're gonna say the opposite. I know you well enough.
I'm very tempted. But the thing is, like, this is definitely not the kind of immortality that I, would choose if I had the option. This is a sort of curse,
Hmm.
actually. That
Yeah, yeah,
you real like this is one thing that I thought of. Um, Interestingly, the book, as far as I recall, makes absolutely no mention of Ouroborans having children, which led me to believe either that Ouroborans are sterile, or that Harry just never wants children, or maybe Harry is sterile, or maybe I don't know. But the point is, the first thing I thought about is like, oh my God, like the worst possible thing would be like to have children and watch them grow old over and over, and possibly have to watch them die over and over. Like
yeah,
that would break you within like two lifetimes. I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
That
yeah.
no matter what else was going on. So
Yeah, I mean, the only mention there is one mention that I think one of his wives, I don't remember which, was frustrated at their inability to conceive. So I wonder if there is like a literal like they cannot have children.
yeah. You'd think that Harry, the doctor and genius scientist, would have like put two and two together there,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. The book doesn't answer that question.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Misfits says it's possible that you could be a Kalachakra right now, Matt, and you're just on your first life still.
Or my 17th life,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I erased my.
Is it that like it's so that is such a great way to frame this, because I think when you're reading the book and you're thinking about this abstractly, you're like, oh, one life, two lives. Like in the concept of the pages you're turning, it's not that much, but like think we are less than halfway through this life, right? We have had 35 years of
Uh-huh.
experience, and this is nothing. This is
Yeah.
nothing to these people.
Right. It really, it's funny. Another way of framing it is like it recontextualizes what like 200 years of life actually is.
Yeah, yeah,
Like that's like it's like 3 or 4
yeah,
lives.
yeah. It's
Um,
crazy.
and yeah.
The other thing I really liked is how much they hate childhood. Like I think one of the things people that reach a certain age is like, man, if I could go back and do my childhood again, knowing what I know now, that would be awesome. And then to these people, like by the time you've done that like once, it's just frustrating. Like
Yeah.
it's just boring. Like the prospect of death in this book so many times is not, oh, I'll die. It's I got to go through adolescence and childhood again, and I really don't want to have to go through that.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. I also really enjoy the bits where it talks about how like when you're a child, you're sort of interested in different things, and when you become an adolescent, you become interested in the things that adolescents are interested in,
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
when you're in your 20s, you become like daring and wanting to go on adventures because that's what 20-year-olds are like. And it's like no matter the fact that you have this centuries old consciousness, your biology actually jerks your mind around quite a lot. I was like, yeah, that's totally true. That's totally how that would work.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. A lot of people are saying in chat that they would not want to be a kid again.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's fun to muse about like what high school would be like, again, knowing what you know now, like not just like information, but knowing about yourself, like knowing like, hey, you should have more confidence than you
Mm.
did, and being able to employ that kind of thing. But yeah, that would be fun for like a day, and then you realize you're gonna do it for 4 years.
Yeah,
Ugh.
you're making me think that I am a college chakra though, because my entire
Oh God.
experience of school was just like being really offended at the indignity of it. So maybe I was actually like 115 years old and just had repressed all those memories.
Only one way to find out, Matt.
Yep. I'll tell you I'll tell you next time around. All right.
Well, that's not helpful for me.
Sorry. All right. Are we done talking about memory?
Yeah, let's talk about the worst quote in the book
The
that makes me so mad.
Cronus Club motto: complexity should be your excuse for inaction. Some 70 or so years later, Fearson sat across the table from me in that manor house in Northumbria and grew angry as I said, complexity should be your excuse for inaction. The complexity of events, the complexity of time. What good is this knowledge to you? It was raining outside, a hard, relentless downpour that had come after 2 days of stifling heat, and unclenching from the sky. Fearson had gone to London. On his return, he had brought more questions and a less yielding attitude. You're holding back, he belted. You say all these things that will happen, but you don't say how. You talk of computers and telephones and the goddamn end of the world, but you don't give us shit on how any of it works. We're the good guys. We're here to make things better, do you see? A better world. When an angry blue vein like a writhing snake stood out on his left temple, and his face, rather than growing red, grew palish gray, grayish pale, I considered his accusations and felt a not inconsiderable part of them to be baseless. I was no historian. The events of the future had unfolded as actions in the present, with little time for retrospective analysis for contemplation, but rather as news stories told on the TV in 60-second chunks. I could no further explain the functions of the home computer than I could balance a kipper on the end of my nose. And yes, I was holding back, not on all things, but on some. I had read about the Cronus Club, and the primary lesson I had learned was that it was a place of silence. If its members were like me, if they knew the future, at least as it pertained to their personal lifelines, then they had the power to affect it outright. Yet they chose not to do so. And why? Complexity, I repeated firmly. You and I are merely individuals. We cannot control massive socioeconomic events. You may try to tamper, but to alter even one event, even in the smallest possible way, will invalidate every other event that I have ever described. I can tell you that the trade unions will suffer under Thatcher, but in truth, I cannot pin down the economic forces behind this phenomenon, or explain in a glib few words why society permits its industries to be destroyed. I can't tell you what is in the minds of the people who dance at the fall of the Berlin Wall, or exactly who will stand up in Afghanistan and say, today is a good day for jihad. And what good is my information to you if acting on a single piece of it destroys the whole? So what do you think, Scott?
So I think complexity should be your excuse for inaction is one of the most despicable things that any human being has ever said ever. Imagine if every person on this planet thought that. Like imagine that. Like no, it's too complicated. I don't it's too whatever. I can't figure it out.
I guess I'll sort of try to devil's advocate for a second, because like okay, so like it does strike me as a very self-serving excuse.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like if you've actually lived multiple lives and you see the way things unfold, and you just have like a visceral like it's just evident to you that the butterfly effect is real, and if you were to try to change some particular thing, then uh, it would just not work out the way you wanted. But the thing is though, I can't really fully devil's advocate, because the thing is Harry August didn't do that.
Yeah, right.
In fact, if anything, he has the opposite lesson by the end of the novel. He has the opposite lesson. The opposite lesson is, look what Vincent did. He freaking had computers in 1950, like you said. So,
Yeah.
obviously, like just knowing about the fact that you can build a microwave and the basic rudiments of it lets you build a microwave, and then you have a microwave.
Yeah.
Microwaves are great. They can probably save a lot of lives.
Yeah. It's just like entire, and we'll get to Harry's serial killer ritual in a bit, but it's starkly hypocritical. Like like we'll get there. But no, I hate this. I hate the Cronus Club. I don't necessarily think that Vincent's way of doing things is like unambiguously the correct way and that Harry made the wrong choice. Like I don't think that's the message of the book, but I do think that what the Cronus Club represents is indifference and stagnation. Is you've taken a look into the void and you weren't satisfied with the answer you got, and so you just said, fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck it. I'm not worried about it. Whatever.
Hedonism and
Yeah,
solipsism.
exactly. It's despicable. I really think it is. And like, I think the thing is that I totally get that to a person that has lived multiple lives, there is a certain amount of, although not entirely accurate, logic to it. But I can't help but like, I don't think the message of the book is no, you don't, if you lived for 400 years you would understand. Like I don't get that. I think I just feel like we're supposed to be disgusted by that saying.
Yeah. The other thing that I like, and I don't know if this is like a complaint or just yet again disagreeing with Harry, but like the way all of this works, like if Vincent had gotten the quantum mirror to work and gotten his answer out of it, and then now he has the answer in his mind,
Mm-hmm.
he could then on his next life just not do any of those things again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole timeline like unspools back into the normal the normal 20th century timeline.
Yeah.
And unless him building the quantum mirror like is the thing that destroys the world at that moment, and then it's like, and then what though?
Yeah.
Then he would be reborn again, and he'd be like, well, shit, that didn't work. Like I guess, and the thing is, the only real lasting like negative impact is that the Ouroborans past that point in time are dying, which I think the Ouroborans as a group find unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But on the whole, like I just said, like every bit of damage that Vincent is doing can be undone if once Vincent gets his answer. I don't know how much weight to put on this, but it was something I was thinking about after finishing.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think like as people are talking about in chat right now, like the central problem is these people only consider themselves people, right? Like
Yeah,
they are
yeah,
entirely indifferent to every other human being on this planet. They don't like the reason why the world ending is bad is because more of us will not be born, right? It has nothing to do with the human beings, the linears, as they've literally othered them. How they will experience their existence, how they will suffer, how they will die. They don't care. They just don't. None of them care.
hmm
Not even Vincent really cares. Um,
yeah,
and it really, I mean, this book talks about gods, and we have a slide where Harry himself is called a god by someone, but like these are just like the Greek gods playing up on Mount Olympus, and they use the humans as pawns in their games with each other, but they don't see themselves as on the same level at all.
yeah. I think like you said, even Vincent, perhaps the quantum mirror might give people, might unlock some answers as to the nature of the universe, but he doesn't actually care about linears.
No, no. He wants answers to his questions. He wants to
Yeah.
know. He wants to know the question that every single person in existence wants to know, which is, why am I here? And specifically, they are people that have been granted this curse, gift, whatever you want to call it, and it's, why am I here? Why was I given this? Why am I not dying? Why am I not mortal?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
Speaking of Cronus Club, let's meet Virginia of the Cronus Club and her 2 rules about being a member. Not so much a rule, Harry darling, Virginia had explained, as good advice. Don't tell anyone where or when you're from. I watched her that night in London, rolling the brandy glass between her fingers, her gaze fixed on nothing much as the sun faded and the city turned black. Death, she explained, can be achieved in one of 2 ways. I don't mean the rather tedious death that our bodies force us to endure every life, not at all. I mean the death that remains, a death that matters. The first death is the forgetting. The forgetting can be chemical, or surgical, or electrical, and is used to achieve a complete wipe of the mind. Not name, nor place of birth, nor the first boy you ever kissed will remain after the forgetting. And for us, what is this if not a true death, a clean slate, a chance to be pure and innocent again? Naturally, we kill everyone who's been through a forgetting as soon as we can perceive that their minds are gone, so that they don't start their next childhood with even the slightest hint of what they are. And when they die and begin again, we can be immediately there in their second life to help them and assist them. Teach them to grow accustomed to what they are without any of that tedious madness, suicide, rejection business. A lot of us have done at least one forgetting, although given the difficulty of the task, it doesn't always take. They tell me, Brandy ran up the side of the glass, then slowly seeped back down, that I have forgotten before, though everyone seems embarrassed to say so. A moment, a second when the ripples went out of the drink in her hand, perfect stillness as Virginia tried to remember a thing she had chosen to forget. There is no loss if you can't remember what you have lost, she explained at last. Personally, I feel a great sense of relief. You wipe away the scars of your former life as well as the memories. You wipe away the guilt. I do not say that I have lived a guilty life, of course, merely that the silence of my peers when I ask about the subject does not bode well for the things that I cannot remember. A tick, tick, tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Soon sirens would sound and stop, and the city would listen for the low drones of the bombers, the deep clearing of death's throat as he prepared to sing.
It, yeah, I don't know. It's such a like you can see how this would just break people.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is what I keep thinking of. It is the fact that like she could have done horrible things, she could have done great things. It's all forgotten, and not only is it forgotten, but like even the ripples of it are gone
Yeah.
because time has reset several times since then. It's such a I don't even have the word for it. It's like not nihilistic, I guess.
It's just total and utter stagnation. I mean,
Yeah.
guilt serves a purpose, right? Like there is a reason we feel guilty for things. Like in an attempt to alter behavior. If you did something that induces guilt, perhaps you should learn from that and then not do it anymore. And this is a way of escaping the base emotions of being a human being.
Yeah.
I think there is no loss if you cannot remember what you have lost is another one of those quotes where I just read that and was like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
Of course there is.
It's like there's two kinds of Ouroborans. There's almost everyone who behaves like this, behaves like Virginia. And then there's the ones who behave like Vincent and that other dude born like several hundred years ago. Forget his name.
Yeah, I know who you mean though. The guy that tried to fix everything. Yeah.
The guy who tried to fix everything, exactly. And wasn't he also a mnemonic?
No, I don't think he was. I think the guy who told about him was.
Okay. Well, in any case, like they're either the ones who are broken or they're the ones who decide like this cannot stand. I have to do something. I've been given this great gift that I can use to take control of reality and fix everything. And I think it's beautifully cynical that all of those people, that guy and Vincent, were both basically destroyed by the Ouroborans saying like, no, don't fix everything because you're going to screw up the whole Ouroboran thing and we're all that matters. So people in the chat were saying earlier, like the Ouroborans basically just as far as they're concerned, they're the only real people in the world.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because it's like in their entire history, they have they're aware of two instances of this happening, right? That one way back a few thousand years ago with Victor and this new one with Vincent and it's just like it's beyond the pale for them that someone says, hey, maybe we could do something. It's like, no, you made it worse for us specifically.
Right.
Yeah, it's just it's frustrating for me because like on the one hand I get it. I get like I get the idea of that like being cursed to remember everything is awful, and allowing like for people that can't die, allowing yourself to forget is your only real choice of death. At least there's that escape that you can have. I totally get that. But the way that they're just like, If I can't remember it, it never happened. So blah blah blah. Yeah.
See, I don't want to. I really deeply don't want to accept that because I think that there's that like almost anything that happens to you, you like it's better for you on the whole for you to be able to integrate that experience. And like you said, if you've done something terrible that you feel guilty about, and that guilt is going to haunt and torment you, then what you need to do is integrate that guilt and change yourself in the ways that you need to in order to be at peace with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do that, if you just erase the memories and erase the guilt, then you have made yourself a monster, as
Mm-hmm.
far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really interesting. We're talking about Virginia specifically because she is the one that ends up helping um, um,
Vincent.
Vincent kill all of them, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
is she just reciting the lines here and eventually just stops believing all this stuff? Like we never really get to see what motivates her to take all this action.
Oh, I think she is just reciting the lines here. I don't think she really believes this. I think that she feels terribly dissatisfied and um, you know, I don't think she's a happy person. I
Yeah,
think
I
she's
mean,
desperate.
none of them seem happy, right? That's the whole thing. Except for
Yeah,
a guy that just entertains himself by fighting in war
fighting in wars. Yeah.
forever. Yeah. I wonder how much you could map these people literally onto the Greek gods as I think about this. That the name of it is
Uh-huh.
literally the Cronus Club, and you have Ares down there just fighting in wars. I wonder if you could do that. That's interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, I'm blanking on any like really really obvious indications of that, but yeah, that guy in particular. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because that one struck me as like, oh, he just dies and then he respawns. It's like an FPS for him, except he's actually killing people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which
But
which
they
again,
don't matter. They
yeah,
don't
exactly.
matter.
That was like the deepest, like, oh my God, these people are so screwed up because like he's literally like killing people, and the people he's killing are just like they have families. They have deep terror as they die from their wounds, and he's just like, you know, um, Leroy Jenkinsing his way through it. Um,
Yeah.
God.
Speaking of Vincent, we've talked a lot about Vincent, but we haven't met him yet. So
Yeah.
let's meet Vincent.
All right. So Harry, his one companion, the young student named Vincent, who's obsessed with finding the answers to everything. And this is when Harry finally realizes that Vincent is also a Kalachakra. I can't help but feeling we're straying back into God's territory, I reminded him. What is science for if not omnipotence? Are you looking for an ethical answer or an economic one? Harry, he blurted, jumping back to his feet and pacing the slim area of floor I'd carefully cleared some months ago for just this purpose. Always you dodge the question. Why are you so afraid of these ideas? I sat up a little straighter in my chair, his indignation reaching almost unusual levels. There was something odd in what he was saying, a little warning in the back of my mind, which slowed my speech, made me answer with more care than usual. Define everything, I said finally. I assume that your tool, if you like, your hypothetical, impossible tool, will, by deducing the state of all matter in the universe, be deducing both past and future states as well? It would stand to reason, yes. Allowing you to see everything that is, and everything that was, and everything that will be. If time is considered to be non absolute, then yes, again, I think that's reasonable. I raised my hands, thinking it through slowly. Alarm was growing in the back of my mind, seeping into my throat, trying to get past my tongue, which I moved so carefully. But by the very act of observing the future, you yourself change it. And so we're back with our time traveler who stepped from his machine and saw the past. You, in seeing the future, will model your behavior differently, or if not that, the future will be entirely tempered by the single moment in which you came to know it, altered by the act of being observed, and we return again to a paradox, to a universe that cannot be sustained, and even if that were not enough, surely we must ask ourselves what will be done with this knowledge? What will men do when they can see like gods? And what and
And then he figures it out.
is this basically the moment when he's like, and you just mentioned the strong nuclear force, which isn't
Yes,
discovered for 10
yes.
more years.
And then he just says Apollo 11.
Yeah,
Higgs boson.
yeah, that's so great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love, I also, I love, yeah, I love later in the book when he's like, oh yes, it's just a word, like Chernobyl or Tiananmen Square. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is, I think, kind of establishing one of the central debates of the whole thing, which is this. I think there is this idea between Vincent and Harry, and this idea that Vincent has that I feel like the book kind of supports, and I do wonder if the changing dates and birthdays and inconsistencies that some of people in chat pointed out are supposed to subtly reflect this idea that it is impossible to not change things. Like you're very like I loved the story about like you go back in time, like it's basically the butterfly effect, right? You go back in time, and even if you stand still and do nothing but breathe air, that can cascade into something that changes everything.
mhm,
And these people are living life based off of future knowledge, and they are acting in their own self-interest, accumulating money, setting themselves and each other up for financial success, and just assuming that their choices here are small enough to where they will not lead to any kind of lasting change, and are completely confident in that the truth of that. And I think Vincent here is arguing like not really, no, like actually like that's not how it works. So like what is it, why shouldn't we try, like why shouldn't we, like it's impossible not to change things, so why shouldn't we seek to learn enough to know everything?
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't I agree with you. I find Vincent's sort of perspective more persuasive, but I mean, that's what's funny is that I still do, even though the book is basically like, hey, he's ending the world. His thing is ending the world. Um, I don't know.
Hmm.
Does Vincent ever really reckon with that? Does he ever like I
He
think he
basically denies it. Like, well, like I
Mhm,
I remember Harry brings it to him, and he's just like, "We're ending." Well, I mean, well, the thing is that Harry just like deduces rather quickly that this must be it, right?
mhm,
I don't know if like we ever get explicit confirmation, but that's not really how this thing works, right? We would never be able to get explicit confirmation that
mhm,
that yes, this is exactly what causes the end of the world, or the speeding up of the end of the world, rather.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, awesome. I like something Mike says in the chat, referring to their childhood as an unskippable tutorial. That's great. Um, all right, Vincent. Vincent's such a good character, though.
Hmm.
Love Vincent.
He is. I mean, like he kind of turns into a mad scientist at the end, and I do wonder if one of the things the book is saying is that this Cronus Clubbian uh, inaction is the only way is wrong, but also this megalomania, like I must know the answer to everything, is too far on
Hmm.
the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of understandable megalomania when you actually have. Um, I mean, there's the megalomania of the the normal person, and then there's the megalomania of the person who actually has supernatural powers and can sort of justify their megalomania. I mean, I get what you mean. In both cases
Hmm.
the result is unhealthy. um but it's yeah it's almost like the story forces you to choose between megalomania and nihilism. It's like those are your two paths, pick
Yeah,
one.
I mean, but why do you have to pick one?
Because well, okay, I guess the third alternative is like the third alternative, I think, basically dovetails into the serial killer story, where you keep your ambitions small, but the result of it is that you just end up putting out the same exact house fires and saving the exact same cats from trees every single life for 10,000 years, and that also drives you insane.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but that's isn't that like, I mean, isn't that existence, right? Like a fireman goes to work every day, and it's not the same fire, but a fireman is always putting out a fire, is always trying to do like that. Is just you just like to quote the prostitute that we're gonna get to here, like all you can do is try to do as much good in the areas around you. Like
Hmm.
that feels like that's what life is, right? Like
Yeah,
and
sure.
seek for ways to help people as much as possible. Seek for ways to put as much good out there in the world as possible. and know that you're fighting a battle that you can never really win.
So what you're saying is just like give yourself a bunch of objectives every life, and then give yourself a score each life on what percentage of those you accomplished,
Sure,
and try to
sure.
do 100% speed run.
I mean, I do think that like the reason the reason for the conflict between Vincent and Harry here is almost boredom. Like it's
Yeah.
exciting. It gives them purpose. It gives them drive. Like they're searching for a reason to do everything. And if Harry can say, my purpose is to stop Vincent from doing this, if Vincent can say, my purpose is to discover this, then they have purpose.
Um, I think there's some evidence to that. I mean, just like the fact that uh, he's obviously having fun
Sure. Yeah.
in his like secret. I mean, like some parts of it are terrible, I
He
think,
lives
but
he lives an entire life
yeah,
pretending to be his best friend. Like
yeah,
like
it's
a
so
whole
screwed up.
life, not just like a year or a couple years. You're not just in too deep at that point. You're
Uh-huh.
you're in
Yeah,
fucking Mariana's
from
Trench too deep.
from birth literally until death,
Yeah.
he maintains it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's the God. Yeah, no. Let me say it out loud. It really hits. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I get the idea of no matter how much good you did, no matter how much bad you did, things keep resetting and your progress is lost. I totally get that, but like, just like I disagree with the sentence that if if you've forgotten something that never happened, I don't agree with if time resets, the thing that you did that was good didn't matter. Like in that life, that person didn't die. In that life,
Yeah,
that fire didn't burn down the house. In that life, that bomb didn't kill that orphanage or
yeah,
whatever. Like
sure.
that has to have value. That has to have some value to it, or else what are we doing here?
I think that segues into the serial killer discussion,
Sure,
which is our next slide
sure,
anyway.
sure. Yeah. Not many women can drink rum disapprovingly, but Auchinleigh, is that how you pronounce it? I didn't know.
Akinlai is the
Auchinleigh,
audiobook.
okay. Auchinleigh could. I don't understand you, Harry, she said at last. I don't understand what drives you. You have wealth, time, and the world at your feet, but all you do is push, push, and keep on pushing at things which really don't bother you. So what if Lyle?
I don't know.
So what if Lyle killed a few people? He dies, doesn't he? He always dies and never remembers. Why is it your business? Is it revenge? No, not really. You can't expect me to believe you'd go to all this trouble for a few linear prostitutes. I think I can, I replied carefully. I'm afraid I must. But prostitutes are murdered all the time. Report Ted Bundy. Track down Manson. Find the Zodiac. Why do you have to waste your time on this one man? Jesus, Harry, is this your idea of making a difference? I can't make a difference, can I? I sighed. There's no tampering with major established events. Ted Bundy will kill. The Zodiac will terrorize California. These things have been, and by the creed of the Cronus Club, must be again. Then why get involved? For Christ's sake, just sit back and enjoy yourself. I craned my head back further to see the light of the stars coming out overhead. In a little over 20 years, a man will walk on the moon. Hundreds of thousands will die in Vietnam for no apparently sensible reason. Dissidents will be shot, men will be tortured, women will weep, and children will die. We know all of this, and we do nothing. I'm not suggesting we change the world. I'm not suggesting we know how. What will the future be if these things do not come to pass? But we must do something, she tutted.
I mean, seriously, spend a few lives figuring out, you know, stopping Ted Bundy, stopping the Zodiac, stopping all these serial killers. Just make it so that that's the first thing you do every life. If you send out the right letters to stop the serial killers, and just keep doing that. See, there's this concept from meditation, and sort of like spirituality literature that I was thinking about a lot during this, which is that like when you kind of grind down consciousness as finely as you can, all that really exists are moments of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and they're strung. They appear to be strung together, but in a certain sense, the stringing together of them is a kind of secondary operation, like how you don't notice the saccades of your own eyes as you're looking around, and your vision is doing these incredibly elaborate things that you have no awareness of. The same thing is happening with your own stream of consciousness. All you really have is moments of consciousness, and it's like, okay, if moments of consciousness are real, and they're in a sense all that there is, all that a person is a string of moments of consciousness, then It doesn't matter, like every time you're sparing human, some human, a terrible moment of suffering that was preventable, you're giving them good moments of consciousness. You're creating good moments of consciousness over bad moments of consciousness.
Hmm.
The fact that the fact that then on the next cycle maybe something else bad happens to them, it doesn't matter because you still created some good moments of consciousness. You
Right,
still you
right.
still avoided some bad ones. You still did a good thing. You still avoided a bad thing. It still happened. It still
Yeah.
was,
I
you
mean,
know?
these people think that the only way our choices will ever matter is if it matters at the end. But by
Mm.
definition, there is no end, right?
Yeah.
Because they will go on perpetually. So like there can never be. So you've created a situation where it's the perfect excuse to not do anything. Um, I like I see there's a lot of chatter in the chat talking about like obviously we can't be expected to do maximal good at all time, and I agree with that. Like we have other things we want to do, we have other things we need to do, but I think there's a difference between doing maximal good every second of every moment of your life and like washing your hands of the prospect of doing anything at all, because what's the point? If like we're never going to stop people from being murdered, so why stop murder, right? We're never going to stop bombs from going off, so why try to stop a bomb? Like it's just like I just fundamentally disagree
I,
with that. Like that if this
yeah.
if the solution is not permanent, then why bother?
Yeah. I'm never going to make $1 trillion in salary from my job. So why go into work tomorrow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it really is it really makes about the same
Right.
level of sense.
Yeah.
Like I agree with you completely. Like this isn't saying like why don't I give all of my money to charity if I care so much about helping people?
Mm-hmm.
It's saying, yeah, you could probably give more to charity.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
I probably could. Um, but but like that doesn't mean I should give all my money to charity.
Yeah.
It means like we could always do something rather than nothing, and that's better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Um,
and the wisdom of a prostitute in Russia.
and what's funny is like Harry does do this thing. This is his
Right.
ritual. He
Right.
goes and he kills this guy every. I think he keeps doing it.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to get back to. We've been talking about these things like, these high ideas here, but to talk about the book and the structure, the writing of the book, I thought it was fascinating the way in which the fact that Harry started this routine is just dropped for us matter of factly. Like he has his ritual, or he has his attempt with him that he bungles and ends up getting killed by the guy, and then he's having this conversation later, and then at some point like 100 pages later he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I've been killing this guy every life for the past like 5 or 6 or whatever
Mhm.
it's been. He's just super casual about it. Oh yeah, by the way, this is like my ritual now. I fucking kill this guy every time.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, oh wow, that's okay, so yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then that adds the scene where where the guy's like, well, I haven't done anything. Here's
Mm-hmm.
my wallet, and
Yeah,
then it's like he hasn't done anything yet. What has he done? What are you punishing him for?
true. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Stop making me consider moral questions, book.
The book does not want to give easy answers, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. All right, so we're jumping a little bit ahead here, and we've learned that Vincent is working on building this quantum mirror, this thing that will answer all questions. And he's asked Harry to help, and Harry is debating whether he should help on this or not. And I just really loved this passage. Like, it's just this flurry of memories here.
Yeah.
All of time and space. Oh, this is yours. Sorry.
This is
I jumped ahead. Sorry.
no worries. All of time and space, all that was or could be, laid out before you like the map of creation. A machine which could, from a single atom, extrapolate the wonders of the universe, explain how we came to be, why we came to be, even us, even the Kala Chakra. I sat and thought about Cambridge and our arguments over roast chicken, about Akinlai pushing the needle under my skin, Richard Lyle shot in the chest before he could commit his crimes, Lizzie, who I had loved, and Jenny, who I had loved in a completely different way, no less honestly, no more truly, crawling at Fearson's feet, Virginia at my door. The femoral artery is best. That's such a gusher. Rory home at my grandmother's funeral, and the look on my father's face as I left him to die. Standing by Harriet's graveside again and again, life after life, a child unable to take the hand of my foster father, Patrick August, who would wither away inside even as his body lived on. What is the point of you? The world is ending. Now it's up to you. Did she scream? It's your past, Harry. It's your past. Are you God, Dr. August? Are you the only living creature that matters? Do you think because you remember it, that your pain is bigger or more important? Do you think because you experienced it, that your life is the only life that gets counted? That's all right then. Bring on omnipotence for the human race. What is the point of you? Are you God? I love it too. I kind of tried to approximate what the audiobook reader did, but I can't really because I'm not him.
Because
But
he's a professional and
but
we're not. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's I found this just really emotionally affecting and powerful here, where he's like the text and the way it's choosing to do these short sentences is really trying to capture the franticness of memory and thought and indecision at these important moments.
absolutely. And it worked. Like that's one thing that I was saying, earlier about like the book almost being a series of short stories that are each making a different point. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
love about this moment is that this weaves together these little bits from each of those to sort of coalesce together into this argument, into this giant push that actually changes his mind.
Yeah.
Because we have different quotes from all the different characters that until this point they weren't really that connected, but now you're like, oh, I get it. He's been laying the foundations for this moment the whole
Yeah.
time.
And in this moment he chooses to help, right? He chooses to help. He says here, bring on omnipotence, bring on uh, these experience count. And like, I don't know, when I was first reading it I was like, yeah, this seems like the right decision, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Is that do anything else you want to talk about here? We're running behind as per usual, so.
No, I think we're good.
But then Harry talks to a Russian prostitute and changes his mind. I particularly like this passage, although I do want to talk about like how this changes things for him. When I was young, I explained, I looked to God to find answers. When God didn't have anything, I looked for answers in people. But all they said was, relax, go with it. Go with it, she queried my American idiom, pronounced in German using her native Russian. Don't fight against inevitability, I translated loosely. Life is until it is not, so why get fussed? Don't hurt anyone. Try not to give your dinner guests food poisoning. Be clean in word and deed. What else is there? Just be a decent person in a decent world. Everyone's a decent person, she replied softly, in their own eyes. She was warm against me, and my fatigue gave my words a slow certainty, a weight that during more alert hours I usually shied from as being too weighty for polite conversation. People don't have the answer, I concluded softly. People just want to be left alone and not bothered, but I am bothered. We ask ourselves, why me, and what's the point? And sooner or later people turn around and say, it's a coincidence, and my purpose is the woman I love, or my purpose is my children, or to see this idea through. But for me and my kind, there is none of that. There must be consequences to our deeds, but I can't see it, and I have to know, whatever the cost. Sophia was silent a while, thinking it through. Then, go with it, she said, the unfamiliar words carefully, and grinning, tried them again. Go with it. You talk about decent people living decent lives as if that doesn't mean anything, like it's not a big deal, but you listen. This decent, it is the only thing that matters. I don't care if you theorize, Mr. Scientist, a machine that makes all mankind and all women beautiful if, while making your machine, you don't stop to help the old mother cross the street, you know? I don't care if you cure aging or stop starvation or end nuclear wars if you forget this, she rapped her knuckles against my forehead, or this, pressed her palm against my chest, because even then, if you save everyone else, you'll be dead inside. Men must be decent first and brilliant later. Otherwise, you're not helping people, just servicing the machine. Ooh.
Yeah. Stop making me think so much.
Right? I mean, because this is like, this is almost the anti-argument to the one we've been making, right? With this idea that like, no, if you have the capability to do good in this kind of way, why shouldn't you?
Yeah.
At the cost of whatever. And this argument here is this woman saying, no, like the most important things is decency first, and then the other stuff comes.
Yeah.
And if in the course of answering all life's questions, you destroy hundreds of thousands and millions and billions of lives. Hey, maybe it's not that great.
Right. I mean, I think this, this is the counterpole to what both Fearson and Vincent did, which
Mm-hmm.
is take a innocent man um, who just disagrees with them and torture him mercilessly to for the greater good. In each of their own minds, they were doing that for the greater good, and the book is fairly explicit that Harry makes that connection. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're the same. You both have decided that you know what's right, and you're so confident that you know what's right and what's necessary that you're willing to torture. In Vincent's case, torture his best friend and maybe the
Yeah.
only person he really cares about. And that's the ultimate form of obviously not only not helping the old lady across the street, but you're torturing your only friend for what you think is important. Like you've lost something somewhere if you get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's Evil Doom. I think it's explicitly an argument against Vincent's point of view. Um, it is an alternative set of values, but I think those values are in opposed. They are opposed to what Vincent is trying to do.
Yeah, it's very. I when you sort of refactor it all down to the basics, I think it gets down to the question of um what he's saying. Like my people, we can't really understand the consequences of our deeds because in a sense the consequences are repeatedly wiped out.
Sure.
And so if you go more with my like moments of consciousness or what matter
Yeah.
model of thinking, then no, actually the consequences, like those things still happen. They just happened in a different timeline,
Yeah.
which you can no longer see. That doesn't mean they didn't happen. That just means you can't see the results anymore. And I think that's how I would have to think about things, or
Yeah.
I would go totally solipsist about it. Solipsist. I keep flipping the vowels in that sentence. Um,
I think one of the things that I think we can reframe this book as is literally looking at the question of, like, we're about to get into some slides that are specifically calling God into question, right? And I mean, right here, I look to God to find answers. Like that's a key part and something the book focuses on a lot. He looks to religion, he looks to a higher power to find answers, and I do think the Ouroborans are like unto God in many ways, right? They exist on a different plane of existence from everyone else. Basically, they have knowledge of things that those people can't possibly know about, and a lot of the back and forth of this book is, does God or a higher power, whatever you want to call it, sit back and watch the world, or do they, or does he intervene in every possible instance because he's all knowing? And like, like it seems to me almost an argument about like free will versus destiny versus a plan.
mm, mhm. Yeah. I'm sort of I'm also sort of trying to I'm reading the chat. I mean, it's really interesting, right? It's sort of like if you make it a very concrete, non-metaphysical argument, you can just say like, look, if you're running like a military weapons and pollution factory in order to make money that you then give to charity,
Mm-hmm.
that's you're doing something wrong
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally. Like you need to not be running the pollution factory, even if it means you have less money to give to charity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that like that's what Vincent is doing wrong here. Like I don't think it's just like, oh, it's Vincent is so arrogant to think that he can solve all of the world's problems and arrogance is the greatest sin and that's why he should be punished. It's like no, he's going about it in a way that is um uh completely intellectualized and completely divorced from like actual humanity and I mean
Yeah.
again he's torturing his best friend
Yeah.
like repeatedly.
I, I agree with what Tringard just said, that like the book almost intentionally creates these things at polar opposite extremes, right? On the one side, there's progress at the expense of everything, damn it all, I don't care. And at the other side, there's inaction. There's just complete inaction. And like the book does not the book doesn't really play in the middle ground, and I kind of see both of our characters, Vincent and Harry, kind of grab hold of their ideological pole and
Hmm.
hold on to it until their death, or in Harry's case, like perpetual existence of meaninglessness. And I think it's a tragedy on both sides a little bit. I mean,
Yeah,
I think we'll get to the last slide. I think the end of the book is like poor, like it's sad. Like I don't think
it's
it's a
terrible.
moment of triumph at all. It's just depressing.
It was very, yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's head toward the ending, Scott.
Yeah, let's get
All
there.
right, next slide. So Harry finally tracks down Vincent, or rather, Vincent, convinced that Harry has had the forgetting, tracks him down. I had him. I had him. I had him. And best of all, I had him without having to expose myself. He had sought out me. He had come to me, and I had him. I had him at last. Utterly cool, as the Americans would say. Time to play it utterly cool. I listened to Mrs. Cynthia Wright's friends discuss in earnest, occasionally frantic tones, the threats of nuclear war, the dangers of ideological standoff, the invasion of technology into conflict, and knew that Vincent was only a few paces from my back, and I didn't look once. Not too cold, not arctic and distant. On my way out of the house, I smiled at him and complimented him once more on his excellent literary taste, expressing the hope that he was a regular subscriber to the magazine. He was. What a good man, what a fine bastion of learning in this ever changing time. Not too hot either. I did not shake his hand on the way out, and as I walked back down the drive beneath the now star studded sky, I did not turn my head to see if he stood in the door.
I like. I just love this. I love
Yeah.
the cat and mouse thing that they do with each other across two lives, like
Uh huh.
across two lives that they're just playing this game. Um, it's just fascinating to me, and like I had him, I had him, I had him. This is like the most excited we've seen Harry August in the entire book, right? Like this is like he it gives him purpose and drive, and he like over the next few years like like charges through his life with meaning and an idea behind it for like the first time in a long time, and like because he has an enemy, he has a target, he has a goal, he has a mission.
Yeah, exactly. It really does change the book quite a bit when he gets into uh, uh, secret agent spy mode. Um, like I said, it seems like he's having more fun now, um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which yeah, and I think there's so many great scenes. There's so many great moments that are just so tense. That's another way in which this part of the book is different. Is just the level of tension really ratchets up because he keeps getting in situations where he's like, is he going to be able to hold it together? Um, the
Yeah.
other thing the thing that's tragic about it though is that like Vincent sort of has this excuse of like, oh, Harry has this great mind. I need his mind. I need his mind to work for me. And it's like, no, man, you keep wiping his mind, or at least as far as you know, you are. What you really just want is your friend, and that's what makes it sad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's. I think Mike just posed that question. Like, why does Vincent seek Harry over and over? It's because he wants him in his life. Like, even if it's dangerous to him, like even if there's a small chance that he could be playing this long con with the forgetting, he wants him in his life. He wants to have him there.
Yep.
And then he goes too far.
Hmm.
Vincent, my enemy, my friend. Of us two, I am the better liar, but you have always been a better judge of men. Was it the final test, the ultimate proof? Could I look into the eyes of my wife as she kissed another man and shake her hand and smile and say how happy I was for you both? Received her kiss on my cheek and hear her voice and know that she was yours, my enemy, my friend, without revealing all? Could I smile as she was led down the aisle, sing my way through the hymns in the church, take the photos as she cut the cake? Or Harry is a journalist. Harry must be good at taking photos, no? Could I watch you whisper words into her ears and see her laugh and smell you on her skin and not rise up in fury because you took her? Not for love, not for passion or companionship or even that therapeutic half hour in the 8-hour shift. You took her because she was mine. Could I smile at this? It would appear that I could. I know now that there is something dead inside me, though I cannot remember exactly when it died. This is like, I mean, we call Vincent megalomania like incarnate, right? But this is like this is unhinged. Like
Uh-huh.
the writing here shifts to an entirely different type of tone,
Yeah.
and
His yeah.
it's wonderful. I
Well,
really like it.
the sort of like obsession you have to keep this game running for 100 years
Hmm.
is quite insane.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. And I mean, just Vincent doing this to him in the first place is also completely insane.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you get sort of like Interview with the Vampire vibes, where it's like, oh, these aren't even humans anymore. They're just playing a completely different game
Hmm.
by different rules. They're like Fae or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's especially effective here because of Harry's previous like British reserved gentleman type of tone, right? And then you hear here you have for Harry. Harry is a journalist. Harry must be good at taking photos. No, like it's just
Mhm.
it's so stark and different from the tone of everything that's come before it. And except for maybe that one passage we already talked about where he's like processing 100 things at once, trying to come up with a decision.
Mhm. Yeah, I love all this stuff. I love how there's so many different parts of this book where they're each doing a different thing, and it's successful with all of them.
Hmm. Yeah. Do we want to
Cool.
move on to the next slide?
Yep.
This is we
Um,
haven't talked about Harry's parents
yeah.
very
So,
much so
so
far.
this, yeah, this is about his fathers,
Hmm.
both of them. So there's the biological father, and there's the man that raised him. Patrick was dead. So was Rory Holn, and Constance and Alexandra, and all the faces of my youth. Holn House had been bought by a man who had made his fortune importing heroin from the Golden Crescent, and he fancied himself a country gentleman, keeping a dozen dogs and transforming the rear of the house into a giant white-tiled swimming pool for his wife and guests. Most of the grand old trees had been felled, and instead, thick-leafed hedges, trimmed into grotesque figures of humans and animals, adorned the old paths and gardens. To prevent calamity, I knocked on the door of the house and asked if I could look around the grounds. I had worked here, I explained, as a serving boy back in the day, and the drug dealer, delighted by the notion of tales of past glories and country living, gave me a personal tour, explaining all the things he'd done with the place and how much better it was now that every room had a TV. I paid my way by telling stories of ancient indiscretions and broken promises, sly gossiping in the 1920s, and the parties of the 1930s, as a shadow of war drew over us, and after, when I had earned my keep, I slunk down to the old cottage where Patrick had lived, and found it overwhelmed with ivy. There was still some furniture inside, an old table, a mattressless bed, but all things of value had been stripped away by thieves or nature. I sat between the brambles as the sun went down and imagined the conversation I would have with my silent father one day. He would sit one side of the fire, I the other, and, as was the way of it, neither of us would speak for a good long while until at last I may say, I know you are not my father. I tried the words out loud just to see how they felt. I know you are not my father, but you have been more a father to me than ever my biological father was. You took me when you did not need to, and kept me when you did not want to, and never once broke down and spoke the truth. You could have destroyed me, the child of your master, and you must have been tempted so many times, in ways which you cannot yourself remember, to end it all, to throw me back from where I came. But you never did, and for that, more than the food on my plate or the warmth of your fire, you have been my father. I think those are the words I would have said if I had ever found the courage to break Patrick's silence and say them, if there was any point in them being spoken aloud, perhaps in another life.
This
God,
is so sad.
that's so good. I was getting kind of emotional reading that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it breaks my heart because it's so it's decent. It's a moment of decency to a person that was nothing but decent to you, but he's not saying it to Patrick. He's never said this to Patrick. He's never said this to
Yeah,
his father. He can only say this to the ruins of that old house.
yeah,
And all he can say about when I will say this is, "Man, maybe in another life.
yeah.
Maybe then."
I,
Um
what I love about that is we always have things where we're like, oh, I regret that I didn't say this
mhm.
when given the opportunity. And I think this Harry August character, fictional conceit, gives the lie to that, where he's saying he's going to totally have another opportunity. He's going to have as many more opportunities as he wants to say this to his adoptive father,
Yeah.
and and he probably won't.
I don't believe he will. I don't believe he
Yeah,
will ever say this to the man. I don't.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I think I could be wrong in this, but I think the book proves out that that's the type of person he is. That he will never actually utter this. And it is heartbreaking.
yeah.
It is everything I think, because I mean we look at where this happens in the book, right? We're coming up to the end, right? I think this is within the last 50 pages of the book, and like Claire North has done this entire time, she's like intercutting moments from different lives together. Like we'll move from chapter to chapter, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, back. We're gonna go back to my third life now and talk about. I forgot to tell you something about that." And so now we cut back. This is, I think, right after he has seen seen Vincent with his wife, that he goes and has this conversation with himself, basically. And it is just like his father was decent in a way that mattered, even though it got reset. Like it's just like, I think this gives credence to the idea of decency,
Hmm.
just like you weren't the best father. Like in the part before this, I think he talks about how, sometimes you beat me a little bit. Like I don't think anything more than like what was common considered corporal punishment at the time. I don't think it was like, I don't know. Do you think it was above and beyond that, where he was actually like abusing the kid constantly? I didn't get that, but
I think my read on it was that he probably was of the culture of spare the rod, spoil the child,
yeah,
and
yeah,
probably hit him with a stick like everybody else did back then. But
yeah.
yeah,
But not to excuse that kind of behavior. I think we've sufficiently found out now that that is not a good strategy. I'm not saying yes we should return to that. No, I'm just
yeah,
saying that like he was kind to him in a way that not many people in his life were, and it's really it just makes me sad, because that line, that end, perhaps in another life, I'm just like, I don't believe you, Harry.
yeah.
I don't believe you.
No, he won't. I mean, it took him really a rather extraordinary circumstance to ever stand up to his biological father.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a really specific thing had to happen for him to ask the question that he really wanted to ask ever since his second life, or his third life, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, uh, yeah, he's not a man. He's not a bold man when it comes to the sensitive and painful matters of his past.
Well, I mean, like, we as mortal people, uh, don't like need to be bold sometimes. Like we
Hmm.
we need to, because we don't get another life to do this.
True.
And I think just the idea of immortality and the idea of this whole Kalachakra thing, like always gives you the excuse. It always gives you the out. It always says there's always tomorrow. Like that is something we tell ourselves constantly. It's like, I'll get to that tomorrow. But that is like you have infinity tomorrows, so you can always say that and it will always be true. And you can just, that's why these people stall. That's why they don't change, because there's no impetus for change. There's no push. Like, hey, Matt, I think like mortality matters a little
Uh-huh.
bit to how we live our lives.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can figure out a way around it if given enough centuries, but
Maybe. Who
maybe.
knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, this
Well,
is the problem, is we are wired to process around our mortality, so everything it comes from that perspective, right? Because it's the only
yeah.
one we have.
I do like what you just said though about like you don't need to be bold if you have infinite tries.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but like it's funny because you would think that it would lead you to making wild and reckless decisions because like it doesn't matter, but it's like, well, no, actually, you fall into you're just as likely to fall into a rut.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
oh, I love what Mike just said. The college rock are like the people in 17776. That's a great connection. I didn't make that connection at all.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I like that a lot. All right, this is our second to last slide, and this is where we're gonna really get into gods and deities. And I kind of already had the conversation I wanted to have, but hey, we'll have it again. So near the very end of the novel, Harry does his, oh, by the way, I got something else to talk to you about in my third life, and it's this. Um, she was silent a long time, deep in meditation, and we devotees had learned long ago not to question these deep and presumably profound pauses. At last she raised her head and, looking straight through me, declared, "You are a divine being." As statements went, this was nothing very new for our man dear. You are a creature of light. Your soul is song. Your thoughts are beauty. There is nothing within you which is not perfection. You are yourself. You are the universe. Chanted by a crowd in a large room, all of this could be rather impressive. Now, with this one woman breathily intoning it, I was struck by just how contradictory so much of it appeared to be. What about God? I asked. This question seemed a little impertinent to Madame Patna, but rather than disappoint an avid follower with a casual dismissal, she smiled her trademark cheerful smile and proclaimed, "There is no such thing as God. There is only creation. You are part of creation, and it is within you. Then why can I not influence creation? You do. Everything about you, every aspect of your being, every breath. I mean, why can I not influence my own path through it? But you do, she repeated firmly. This life is only a passing flicker of the flame, a shadow. You will cast it off and soar to a new plane, a new level of understanding, where you will realize that what you perceive now as reality is no more than a prison of the senses. You will look, and it will be as if you see with the eye of the Maker. You are within creation. Creation is within you. You are an aspect of the first breath that made the universe. Your body is made of the dust of bodies that have gone before, and when you die, your body and your deeds give life. You, yourself, are God. In later months, I grew rather tired of such empty aphorisms, and when a dissatisfied disciple whispered in my ear that our austere ascetic leader, in fact, lived a life of wealthy luxury some 3 miles down the road, I threw down my straw hat and hand scythe and left to find a better philosophy. Yet all these lives later, I still wondered exactly what it would mean to see the universe with the eyes of God. Harry.
So it's really quite hilarious
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know. I mean, yes, it's said in this sort of cliched, spiritual mumbo jumbo patois,
Yeah.
but also like it. I think it's basically accurate, like wisdom
Yeah.
that he should be listening to.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
tired of such empty aphorisms.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you're right that it's and I mean, there's some great touches in it, right? Like you will leave this body behind and go to a new plane where your senses are opened up. And sorry, Harry, that option is not available to you.
Mhm.
You don't have an afterlife. You just have life again. But I agree with that. I mean, like going back to theology a little bit, like Tolkien believed that creation was one of the most powerful things in the world, right? And he believed that we create because we are built in the form of our creator. Like that's what he believed, and that's how he expressed his love and obsession with the act of creation that informed so much of his writing. And this is kind of saying that same thing. This is like we create, like don't we every day? Like we create stories, we create novels, we create life, we create interactions, we create book clubs. Like
Mhm.
we are constantly creating things, and there is something beautiful and powerful to that, and that creation goes on whether we do or not. And I love the like other plainness of it, that like even that we've been talking about the whole time, that even if the world ends tomorrow, like the thing we did today still existed, and that matters.
Yeah, yeah. I mean it's just so much of it is just rooted in who Harry August is as a person, that
Right.
like his first, like, I don't even I don't keep very good track of it in my head, honestly, but it seems like his first like 8 lives, he just lives a very boring life as like a sort of middle class British person,
Mm-hmm.
doing various very kind of staid and respectable British middle class jobs. Like at no point does he decide like I'm going to be a mountain helicopter rescue person, or
Right.
like he's not interested in that. And it's like, why can't I control my path through, why can't I influence my path through creation? It's like, because you just keep doing the same things every goddamn time. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not, your hands are off the steering wheel, and you're complaining that the car isn't going where you want it to.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's who he is as a character.
Right. Well, and I think that the interesting thing is, like, chronologically, this is when it gets weird, because this is at that near the very end of the book. This is like the last thing before he walks into that bunker and sabotages the eye, right? And like basically, like he's returning to this story and basically saying that even now at the end of this road, um, he's learned nothing from this, like, which is like his ending thought on this is that Madame Patna was a fraud, and I found no answers to anything she said, and it was useless to me, and I abandoned it. Right. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, like it's just like it's totally true. Like, why can I not influence creation? Of course you do. You do every day.
Yeah.
Every day we're influencing creation.
Empty platitudes, Scott.
The mirror, sorry, not the eye. The eye.
Yeah.
I was
I like
thinking,
calling it the eye, though.
well, this game or this book has a lot. Like, there's cycles and the Outer Wilds game we played. Everyone that played and read, do you all understand what I was going for?
I don't, but it's funny to me that there's confusion.
Mhm.
All right, last slide, I guess.
Yeah, let's end the book.
This is the last pages. Harry beats Vincent and plans to kill him. He wins, and he will maintain the status quo, and nothing will change. You will send men to find me, and with little difficulty they will indeed stumble on my corpse. Akinlai will be gone, her work done for this day, as well as the empty needle. They will find these words and bring them to you, I trust, in the hospital. Your eye will scan this page, and with my very first words you will know. You will know, as you already must know, that you can no longer deny in the pit of your belly that you have lost. You have lost. And in another life, a life yet to come, a 7-year-old boy will walk down a lane beyond South London with a cardboard box in his hand. He will stop before a house whose gardens smell of rhododendrons and hear the whistle of a passing train. A father and a mother will be in that place. His name is Howard, hers is Ursula. Their gardener, who keeps the flowers so fragrant, goes by the name of Rankus. The 7-year-old child will approach these strangers and, with the innocence of youth, offer them something from his cardboard box, an apple maybe, or an orange, a caramel sweet, a piece of sticky toffee pudding. The detail is not important, for who would refuse a gift from such an innocent child? The father, the mother, maybe even the gardener too, for caution is not for such events, will each take something from the boy and thank him and eat it as he turns and walks away up the lane. I promise the poison will be quick, and Vincent Rankus will never be born, and all will be as it should. Time will continue. The clubs will spread their fingers across the eons, and nothing will change. We will not be gods, you or I. We will not look into that mirror. Instead, for those few days you have left, you are mortal at last.
God, fuck you, Harry.
Yeah.
Like the hero of our story ends the book by poisoning a pregnant mother, her husband, and maybe the gardener too, just for good measure.
I mean, God, I mean, like if you view the Ouroboran nature as being like a curse, like being a vampire, then really the greatest favor he can do for his friend is to say, hey, this is your last life.
Yeah.
Go look at the sunset before I kill you forever. Not that I'm saying I think that that's the way the book is really meant to be taken, but it's like the only way you can take it and not just be like, oh my God, what a horribly sad ending. Like when the book ended, I was like, that's it? No, oh my God, that's awful. And I mean, in a good, like in the best possible way. Like I love it, but also you're like, oh God,
Yeah.
this is monstrous.
Yeah. I like just the way the charge of this writing. Like the clubs will spread their fingers across the eons, and nothing will change. Right, all will be as it should. Time will continue, and nothing will change. It is the statements of a villain, like a villain that has won. And I mean, again, I don't think that Vincent's path was the perfect one either, and I think the book like loves to live in this between area, but it's so overwhelmingly sad to me that this is what Harry's life has come to, and he's gonna continue living on. He's just gonna go on, and he's just gonna become another one of the Kalachakra that are just indifferent to everything, except he'll probably eventually go insane because he can't do the forgetting.
Yeah, he'll probably arrange to have himself killed at some point.
Yeah.
Which is
so
God.
We've been seeing. So there's been a lot of talk in the chat throughout this whole thing, and the question I want to pose to you now is, why did Harry sabotage the mirror? Why did he choose at the end? Why is this what he chose at the end? That he must prevent this from happening.
Well, I mean, I think it was just a decision that he would rather let history take its course than be responsible for destroying the world or the universe. Possibly, we don't really understand the nature of what would happen if he turned the thing on. I think that like it's sort of implied that some like cataclysmic thing would happen
Mm-hmm.
in a way where it's like, okay, maybe whoever looks into the mirror or uses the mirror will get their answer. They'll get their answer, but it's at the cost of destroying everything. And it's like, well, then that's not really worth the cost, is it? Like maybe it would have helped if the book were a bit more explicit about what would actually happen if you looked into the
Sure.
mirror.
Sure.
Like what if the answer was like, yeah, if you look into the mirror, you as a Kala Chakra actually get your full and final and satisfying answer to the life, the universe, and everything, and then the universe immediately ends afterward. Like, okay, that's not very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would be different if it were like you could then use that knowledge to fix the past. But I don't think it's implied that you can use that knowledge to fix the past, because what you see happening is the end of the end of the world is getting sooner and sooner. I pretty much always believed what was happening is that by accelerating the technological timetable, what was happening is like people were building the quantum mirror 1,000 years in the future, and then 900 years in the future, and then 100 years in the future, and then finally they're building it now because the technology has been accelerated that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so the end of the world in every case is, oh, that's when humanity builds the mirror, because they figure it out on their own, because why wouldn't they figure it out?
Yeah, it's an inevitability. It seems
Yeah.
like, yeah. And that's, I mean, that's what the beginning of the book says, right? It's like the concern is not that the world is ending; it's that the world is ending. The end of the world is coming faster.
Yeah.
Like the world is always going to end. That's always going to happen. To a person who lives forever. Like,
Yeah.
it's a bummer for the Kalachakra born right before that, though, huh? They just got to chill in the final days.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, or they could try to stop it. Like that's what, like, you try to stop it.
yeah, I mean, we have to say again that, like, I know, I think you're probably right, but I do think North leaves it ambiguous intentionally. Like, we don't know with absolute certainty that it is the mirror that's causing this. Harry just makes an educated inference that it is. Like he said, like, what is, like, in every cycle, it's getting closer. Things are changing. Ergo, it must be us changing it. It must be the Kalachakra. And then he sees Vincent working on his thing and says, it must be this. And once he's made that determination, he's just like, okay, that's it. I've solved the puzzle. And he doesn't really do any more research beyond that to confirm that. Like, is there a way to send a message into the future through time? Is like, hey, is it like a quantum mirror thing going on? Do you know? Can you report back? We don't really see that happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think at least one person in the chat has pointed out that at least part of Harry's motivation is hate and revenge and
spite,
obsession.
Yeah.
Which I don't think can be disentangled from his higher motives. So
I do think part of it is fear as well, and I don't think the book states that explicitly, but I do think that like knowing everything is also terrifying. Generally, like we ask these fundamental questions. Are we prepared to get the answers to them? Like, what is the answer? What is the answer to why you exist? Right. You right now. Why do you exist, Matt? Is there an answer to that question? And if there is it one you're going to find satisfying?
Exist to make this podcast episode.
Well, there you go. I find that satisfying.
Yeah.
All right, we can shut it all down now. It's this episode.
Yeah. Well, it's great.
I
really, really enjoyed this book.
I guess we've had a lot of people say that the book's kind of final message is a Luddite one, that progress is bad generally, right? And while I don't like directly disagree with that, I do think the book attempts, and maybe it is a little clumsy in this, and that's where the confusion is happening, or the disagreement is happening, that, like, to me it was progress for the sake of progress is bad. like the kind of reckless progress that we see
Yeah.
Vincent undertake here. But
Progress at the cost of
yeah,
humanity.
right. But I do think the book doesn't maybe could have done a better job sticking that, you know. Because like we only get a couple examples of people tampering with this stuff, and it's just basically like anytime we accelerated the progress of humanity, everything blew up in the end. That's just like that's what happens anytime. So it's like, okay, so accelerating progress in any way is bad, right?
Mhm.
That's like the declarative statement of the book, and I don't like again I'm having trouble arguing against that. I don't fully agree with it, but I'm having trouble arguing against it.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, one thing that was kind of hard for us to nail down because there's only so much we can really get into, but like it seems like every Ouroboros that the book actually focuses on has like a reversal by the end. Like Akinlai starts out as the most pure hedonist in the story.
mhm.
Um
Like
ba-
the Dionysus or the
the exactly. And she and then and she's even like, she's the one who's like, prostitutes get murdered all the time, who cares?
mhm.
And then she, like, in a drug fueled binge, basically is responsible for the death of this linear woman, which you would think she would just be like, whatever, that happens sometimes. But then, like, eventually she ends up doing a forgetting because she's just like sort of overwhelmed by the things that she's done that she now feels are terrible, actually.
Mhm.
And she becomes kind of a different person in her next kind of iteration.
Yeah.
The next her is not a hedonist anymore. um
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. Mike is bringing up a really good point here that I want to focus on too. It's odd that Harry works so hard to preserve the status quo, even though he doesn't seem to find it all that appealing slash satisfying. I think
mm,
that's true, and I think that's true for all of them, right? Like all the
yeah,
Cronus Club, like none of them seem happy. None of them seem like
right.
they're enjoying existence, but they are terrified of the idea of it going away to the point where they would rather preserve the status quo than risk any kind of loss of life, loss of existence.
Hmm.
It's yeah, that's a really
Yeah,
fascinating contradiction at the
sure.
core of these people.
I mean, if you think about the Cronus Club as a club of people who are just happen to be distributed across time, then your club members who just happen to be in the future are basically always going to be like, hey guys, everybody aft of us, don't rock the boat, because if you screw things up, we're the ones who will cease to exist permanently.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and that's, just kind of a fun consequence of the nature of
yeah.
what these creatures are.
I think there was a comment earlier that I missed as we were talking, but someone was like, basically, it is the Cronus Club was created by the people in the deep past and perpetuated this idea of indifference to ensure their own survival. Like that's all they cared about was like we must push forward this culture of indifference and inaction because we don't want to die.
Hmm.
And then so they created this entire culture of people who just don't give a shit. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. I wonder who, like, the first college chakra is, like, in terms of the objective timeline. Like,
Yeah, like who's the oldest? Yeah.
yeah.
Who
Yeah.
knows? Who
I mean, I
knows?
mean, it's obviously moot. It's just,
Yeah.
what I actually meant was, like, I wonder what it's like for them to to be like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
It's fun there's a lot of stuff in this story where it's fun to think about and fun to kind of riff on.
Yeah. So Frenia is saying, I'd love to see a short story from the POV of a Stone Age Kalachakra. That would be
Yeah.
that would be great.
Yeah, I
Oh
was
my
kind of just
gosh.
thinking about. So,
Yeah.
like, I don't know about you, but, like, I've always, like, it almost seems like one of those natural story ideas that everyone has. Like, when I was a kid, I remember thinking, like I would kind of like think about book ideas, or, write the book in your head, as it were. And I would be like, what if were able to travel back into the body of your past self? And usually I would use that the way you would expect, like, a high school student to use it, which is like, oh, I would use it to, for personal gain.
Hmm.
And that would be the plot of the story, is how to sort of metagame or munchkin the scenario.
Sure.
But I find this book such a more mature and satisfying take on these ideas, because it's not almost no one does any munchkinning at all. It's more like, God, what would people actually do in this situation?
Yeah.
And a very deep philosophical look at uh, human nature and what we are all like by saying, well, how would we behave in this
Yeah.
situation?
Well, and I mean, the munchkining that is done is kind of yada yada, right? Like the book
Mm,
just kind of glosses over all the steps that people take to ensure wealth and success in the world. It's like, yeah, I became a doctor, blah blah blah
right.
blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah. I exactly. I yeah. I happen to have all of the knowledge of being a doctor, and so I became a doctor and probably took a job away from some other person who could have been a doctor.
Right. Yeah. I think one other interesting idea would be seeing this story from the perspective of Vincent. I think would be a fascinating thing, because
Yeah.
like we this is all from Harry's point of view, and we are colored by who Harry is as a person, and what Harry wants and what Harry experienced, and seeing this from Vincent's point of view, I think would be fascinating. I really
Mhm.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Um, I think that would be fun. I've never heard of this writer before, and
Yeah, me
um,
neither.
I didn't even actually bother to look into what else Claire North has done, if anything. Uh, and
I
now
believe
I'm
it's a pen name. I don't know if this is. Yeah, Claire North is her pen name. Her name is Catherine Webb, and she writes fantasy novels as well. She's done quite a few novels, actually.
yeah, that's cool. A bunch
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm now interested because I thought that the prose was great, the characters were great. It really fired on all the
Hey
cylinders that I
Matt,
care about.
hey
So,
Matt, let me make you sad for a second here.
okay.
She was born a year after you.
No,
Look how many novels she's written.
why do you, why? I hate her now.
Oh, it's wonderful.
All right. I'll get over it in time.
The discussion questions mentioned that the theme wouldn't change if it was from Vincent's point of view. Oh, I don't. I always let me. Maybe that's where I got that from and totally forgot. Yeah, you want to look at the book club questions?
That'd be fun.
Who, in your view, is the villain of the story? Is there a villain?
We're probably supposed to say either August or Vincent and then debate about that. So,
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, how would the story have changed if? No. Ba, 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 ba. Ultimately, the first 15 lives of Harry August serves to tell us that the search for the meaning of life is hopeless. Discuss. Stop trying to start fights, book.
that's great. I think we seem to have discovered a lot of these ideas on our own, which tells you that the book was good at conveying its ideas.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree with that pretty totally. Yeah, I loved this discussion. Thank you all so much. This was a lot of fun. I think we generally agree largely on a lot of this stuff, but we also have very different different interpretations, and I think that's what makes a really fun book club.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, there's
Well nominated and voted for everyone that got this one in. That was a pleasure.
and there's a lot of people in the chat. I really appreciate everybody's conversations and debates. It's hard to read while talking, but I have been sort of reading as I go and trying to digest things, and I think it's improved the conversation here. So yeah,
Hundred
thanks
percent.
for participating.
100%. Let's talk about next month, though,
All right,
shall we?
let's.
Most people already know about this book because we did release the book title last Friday when our book club was supposed to be, so people could get a jump on reading it. But next month's book is called A Memory Called Empire by Arcady Martin. Or Martine? Martine. I think it's Martine. Or Martine? I don't know.
I would say Martine.
What are words? What are words? But yeah, this is actually, we had one of our options for some of our patron donors at the Supreme Leader level. One day we're gonna become professionals and make our our Patreon tier sound professional. Today is not that day, but one of our patrons, like, you get to either select a TV show for us to do a show on, or you can select a book club book, and they selected this book. So this is the book we're going to be covering next month. It will be August 28th, which is only 3 weeks from today. So we will be back, not in 4 weeks, but only in 3 weeks. But I think this book is about as long as the last one. So I think it's like 80 more pages. So hopefully everyone will be able to get through it in time. Start now or yesterday or whatever.
Yeah.
I've read the synopsis of this one, Matt, and I think it's gonna, just but from the synopsis alone, I think it's gonna lead to a lot of the fun kind of conversation we had this month. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh boy, I know nothing about it yet, so that makes me excited.
Trinkard gives a really good point here that how can we have serious professional role names with a company called Doof?
Yeah, it's the name that keeps on giving.
I did wonder about this when I submitted myself for press accreditation for the film festival that I'm working at the end of the month. I was like, I was very proud of that I had like Scott at doofmedia.com and looked professional, but also I was like, but also
It's Doof.
Doof.
I like when people from Germany tell us, you know that Doof means dumb in German, and I'm like, it means dumb in English too.
That's part of the point. So Frenny is saying you're not allowed to listen to the audiobook on this one, Matt.
Noted. And put filing that information away into my secret filing cabinet.
I think there are a lot of challenging words in this one that I like, some made up words that are complex spellings that are going to be difficult to say out loud, but you will be listening to the audiobook and cheating because you will know the pronunciation. Mm-hmm. But what's going to happen is you won't know how they're spelled. And that's going to be fun when you see a word and you have to guess which one was the one I heard out loud. Ooh, it's going to be fun either way.
So basically, this is going to be like a brain teaser next month.
Uh-huh.
Cool. Well, yes. At least one of us will know how to say the words.
Yeah, I guess that that works better in your favor, I guess. Whatever. All right, folks, that is all. Thank you so much again for everyone that tuned in live. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to all of you. That was a really fun one. That's one of the ones I enjoyed the most. I love book club, man. It's so fun. I say this every month, but I love it.
Yep.
So thanks. Yeah. If you are listening to this podcast after the fact, I think this is like proof positive of how much better it is if you are able to attend live. So hopefully next month you can make it.
Yeah. If you like what we do here at Doof Media and you want to see more of it, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia and consider donating $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to get access to our Discord server, as well as the ability to vote for which books we cover and tons of other cool benefits. So check that out.
Are you doing that to your face on purpose right now?
What?
You're freaking me out. I'm trying to end the show and you're like freaking me out.
No, Scott. Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my God, we gotta go. Thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you all next month, or well, later this month.
That's right.
Damn it, Matt. It's so hard to focus when you're glitching.
Well, I waited the whole show to do that to you. I had to do it at least once.
That's fair. I'm glad you were. Yeah, thanks for all the first-time attenders, Mike. Great to see you here. I think we said we had another one, right? This was a great first book club by Miss Evil Doom. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like when we first started doing this, like honestly, Matt and I, like one of the first shows we wanted to do was a book club. I think I just got bit by a bug.
No.
What was that? One of the first shows we wanted to do was a book club, but that was back when we didn't have any viewers, so like there was no one to talk to.
Yeah, I mean we did do a book club. I listened to our first book club a while ago, and the audio quality is so bad.
Oh, it's awful.
God, it's literally unlistenable.
It's amazing how it sounded fine. Really curious what kind of bug that was, because it did hurt. Did anyone see it on the camera? Because I don't know where it is now.
Thanks, Sylphrina.
It was a B. Well, I think so. We recorded. Matt, refresh my memory. We did a book club on The Martian as like the first thing we recorded, right? And we tossed that. We never published that because that was like our test run.
It was our practice podcast to see if we could do it at all.
Yeah. I remember it being a good conversation, but I'm probably remembering incorrectly.
Yeah. Well, the one I was referring to that was not listenable was the Fates and Furies.
Yeah.
Which I think it was really entirely my fault. Actually, it was like because I don't know why. My audio setup was unworkable.
What kind of bug was it, Mike? Was it a bee? What was it? Driving me insane. Did it fly away?
This is like that episode of Breaking Bad.
It really hurts.
Sorry you got stung by a bee somehow.
I'm only thinking it was a bee because I thought I saw a bee in my house earlier. And I didn't. I lost it. But I don't think it hurts enough to be a bee. But it has been a while since I got stung by something. I'll have to look at it in the mirror and see if it's turning red and swelling up. That's fun.
I mean, I see that this book has words like Tix Kalanalani, which, I mean, okay.
Yeah, that's nothing, right? That's easy to pronounce.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, not bee. I think we don't have much bees around here. We have a lot of wasps and hornets. Evil bastards.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Everyone, thanks for hanging out. That was so fun.
It was.
I was looking forward to this one.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought much about the book other than just like, wow, I enjoyed the heck out of that. But definitely there's a lot there to tug on. A lot of themes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go look in a mirror and see what's happening to my face. But
all right, are we wrapping up?
Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap up. It's almost midnight anyway, so thanks for hanging out, everyone. This was a lot of fun. Again, sorry for the delay. Sorry we made you guys wait another week, and now there's a little bit shorter time for the next one. But we didn't want to mess up the schedule because that interferes with Game Club, and we don't want to run on the same weekend as them every month. So we thought we'd just keep next month's where it is and just have a little bit tighter of a schedule. But hopefully it'll be all right. But we'll see you in a few weeks, 3 weeks, for A Memory Called Empire, where Matt and I say all the right pronunciations.
Yep. I'll practice.
Me too. Catch y'all later. Bye.
Bye.